you looking to learn more about your spiritual journey? Are you on a healing journey? Have you tried conventional ways of healing but didn't get the results you desired? If so, this podcast is for you. My name is Reverend Dr. Jackie Cope, and I'm a metaphysical minister, intuitive guide, and teacher. Here at Raven Rabbit, we believe that your ancestors, spiritual guides, and divine self are ready and eager to help you heal and prosper. We approach life, healing, and happiness through a holistic, indigenous spiritual lens to create the lives we want. Join me to radically change your life today. Hello, hello. Welcome to episode 59. This episode is for observe. If you are new here, we are diving into the rooted framework for coming home to yourself. Okay, so we did R in the last episode, which was talking all about regulation. So if you haven't listened to that one, I suggest going back to 58, listening to regulation, because I will be referring back to that episode quite a bit, because we need that regulation in order to build the next step of our rooted framework, which is observation. So rooted as a framework for coming home to yourself, not through fixing or forcing or making you become someone else, but through remembering what was always there beneath your survival. So, the last episode, as I was saying, we were talking about regulate, creating safety in the nervous system, because without regulation, everything else becomes distorted. So, today, we're moving into the second stage of rooted. Observe. This is a stage almost everyone skips, and it's not an accident that we skip it. Our culture is designed that way. Before we go any further, I want you to take a breath with me. Inhale through the nose, fully arrive. Exhale out of the mouth. Let your shoulders drop. Unclench your jaw. Notice where your body is feeling supported. No fixing, no improving, just noticing. This is the beginning of observation. So, short little invocation today for episode 59. Masters, guides, angels, universe, God, creator, thank you for having us come together in this podcast and in this way to have these really deep, important conversations. Traveling along on this podcast journey has been a dream come true for me, and being able to reach so many who need to hear this message and have you in their presence is just a blessing and so important. So thank you. We invite you into this space as we have this conversation. Whatever needs to land, please let it land. And whatever needs to fall to this side, let it fall to this side. And so it is. So, why is observation skipped? Well, we live in a society that tells us, it like screams at us, you need to know yourself. You need to heal yourself. Speak your truth. Take action. Manifest faster. Decide now. But almost no one teaches us how to witness ourselves first before we decide who we are. We are encouraged to react really quickly, to label things quickly, to identify immediately in this culture. So, you might be identifying that I am anxious, I'm depressed, I'm triggered, I'm broken. I need to change something right now. What we're actually doing when we do this is we're responding from a dysregulated nervous system. And then we're building identities from it, making decisions out of it, and we're making entire life paths from that place. And this is why I told you the regulation piece is so important. Because I talked about in last episode, if you can recall, that a lot of us are making decisions from a dysregulated nervous system. So, observation is the opposite of this. Observation feels slow in a culture that is so addicted to urgency. Observation can feel passive in our culture that's so obsessed with productivity. Observation feels threatening in our culture that confuses awareness with weakness. But observation is not doing nothing, okay? Observation from a regulated nervous system is power in itself. So we want to talk about the difference between reaction versus observation. Reaction is automatic. Okay, it's fast, it's protective, it comes from survival. This thing happens or this feeling comes in, therefore I react immediately. And you may feel justified in that reaction too because you know yourself. So since you know yourself so strongly, you have the right to then have that reaction. Observation is going to be the opposite of this because it is spacious. It's curious. Observation is non-judgmental. And it comes from a place of safety. Reaction's always telling us that this feeling I'm having means something is wrong. Reaction tells us that I had this thought, so it must be true. And the biggest one in our society is this discomfort must be fixed. Okay, because we live in a society that believes we should have the right to comfort all the time. Observation, instead of saying, oh, I have this feeling and something's wrong, you would say, something's happening in me. Because you're just observing it. You're not naming it yet. Oh, something's happening and it's happening in me. And we question, like, what is that? And then instead of saying, oh, I'm having this thought, it has to be true, you can be like, I see that thought. And I can watch that thought without becoming it. And again, always trying to fix our discomfort. Like, oh, this discomfort has to be fixed. In observation, we don't have to decide anything yet. I don't need to decide anything yet. Most of us were never taught the distinction between these two. We're taught that our thoughts are facts and that our emotions require immediate reaction. I said reaction, but they require immediate action. And that discomfort is dangerous because we shouldn't be uncomfortable. So anybody who works out, we've heard the phrase, get comfortable being uncomfortable. That's kind of where we want to be with this too, that kind of mindset. So with all of these thoughts that our emotions require action, our thoughts are facts, and we don't want to be anywhere near discomfort, we skip observing and we go straight into doing. And this can show up in your life as texting back immediately, defending yourself instantly, quitting your jobs too soon when something happens, ending a relationship too soon, spiritualizing pain before we even understand it, or trying another way, if we're not so spiritual, is just to make meaning immediately before we fully understand what even is going on. Okay, and we do this not because we're impulsive, but because our nervous systems have learned that speed equals safety. If we can speed our way through this process and we can get through to the other side, we will be safe. So, a dysregulated nervous system creates this sense of false urgency. And false urgency can feel like I have to do something now or else. If I don't respond immediately, I will lose control. If I sit with this, it will swallow me. I'm sure many of you felt like that. I have felt like this many a times. So we create this false urgency when we are in a dysregulated nervous system and we do not practice observing. But that urgency that we create is not connected to our intuition. It is not the truth. It is survival energy just seeking any type of relief that's out there because our bodies are so quick to find that immediate relief. Our brain wants to go back to the old pattern we've always thought because it's a hell of a lot harder to sit here and make a new neural pathway and a new belief than it is to just go back to the belief that already exists and already has a very connected neural pathway. So when the nervous system is activated and we're dysregulated, the brain looks for meaning super fast. It'll assign a story, it reaches for identity and say, "Oh, this is how this is what anxious looks like." Okay. So, our brains will do that. It wants to assign a story, and we do this so fast sometimes we don't even know that we do it. Yesterday I was reflecting, I was listening to a podcast and she had asked, what stories are you telling yourself that you don't even know you're telling yourself? And I started thinking about it, and it was like, I tell myself so many stories without even knowing that I do it. And they can be really simple ones. Like, as I've told you before, I was in the classroom as in the education field, classroom teacher. And I told these stories of like, oh, I have to be a teacher for this many years, and then I have to be a principal. And in order to be a successful principal, you should have taught at least 10 years. No one's going to respect you if you've not at least taught a minimum of 10 years. Because if you've not taught for 10 years, you don't know what the hell's going on. But like, I just made this story, you know? That's not true. Somebody doesn't have to teach for 10 years to know what's going on. But like, I'm saying the stories we create can be real simple like that. And I held on to that story. Like, I need to stay in the classroom a minimum of 10 years before I go out and do anything else with education, because no one's going to respect me. Look at that story I created. That's not true. I get to decide in my creator field what's true and what's not. And look what I decided. Okay. So your brain looks for meaning super fast, and it'll do it all the time. And this is how anxiety becomes your personality, or this is how trauma becomes your self concept. And this is how temporary states become these permanent labels that you give yourself. What observation comes in and does is interrupts that entire process. It says, I can let this move through me without defining me. And if we have these old neural pathways and we're not using a neuroprogramming tool, we will make those connections really quickly and let a thought, emotion, or experience define us really quick. Like, oh, that's why I don't ever try. That's why I don't bother. That's why I don't put myself out there for dating. Look what always happens. So instead of all of that happening, we can let things move through without them defining you. Observation also says, I can watch the mind without obeying it. Because our mind, that's its job, it's in survival mode, is to find the neural pathway that it has already made and make us process it really quick. But you don't have to obey that thought pattern, okay? You could say, what is this thought pattern bringing up for me? Why am I always so quick to go here with it? What's going on? We're going to get to that a little bit further about how to handle that. I can feel sensation without making it my story. So sensations and things are going to happen around you, lived experience. It does not have to become part of your story. And this is why regulation comes first. In order to do these things, we have to get to a regulated state, and then we can observe them. You cannot observe from survival. You can try. I mean, everyone's pathway is their own pathway, but a lot of times, if you're trying to observe from that survival, your brain is just going to, like I said earlier, make that survival path and get us through the issue, where you can only react instead. And that is not where we want to live and where we want to be making decisions from. Okay, so observation is not detachment or dissociation, because you might be thinking, well, sounds like I'll just observe things and never feel them, and that's not how I want to live either. No, observation is not checking out. It is not dissociation, and it is not spiritual bypassing. Observation really is this intimate presence. It's saying to yourself, without grabbing the steering wheel and making immediate decisions, It's staying with yourself, not saying, sorry. It's staying with yourself. Like you're here, you're seeing it. And you're saying to yourself, I am here with you. I am not leaving. I'm not trying to fix you and change you. And I'm not making you wrong either. Like, we're not telling ourselves, oh, it's wrong to feel that way. Oh, it's wrong that I'm reacting this way or having this reaction to this experience. We let all of those things still live, like, but we don't act on them. Something happens to you and you are like, oh, that's making me really angry. Why? I'm observing anger in this. Oh, that's making me really uncomfortable. Why? And we keep checking in with our intuition and we find out why it's bringing something up. Many people fear this observation because they think if they stop reacting, they stop caring because you think you're dissociating. And we're not. I'm not telling you to not feel your feelings. I'm telling you to observe your feelings and figure out why. Observation deepens compassion first for yourself. We have to put ourselves first. And then when we do it for ourselves, we can reflect that back to others. Because what you give yourself is what you're giving others. Okay? And that gets into a spiritual law, as within, so without. When you observe your own fear without attacking it, you stop attacking fear in others. When you observe your patterns without shame, you stop shaming people for theirs. And this is how real healing spreads. Okay, it does so quietly, it does so subtly, it does so without you having to preach on a soapbox. As within, so without. I always forget the law for that, but I always remember the little saying because it is so true. I'll have to look up that law. As within, so without. So, cultural conditioning plays a piece in all of this, and it plays a piece into this illusion of our self-knowledge. Because we're told in society we should know ourselves. But what does that usually even mean? It can mean knowing your personality type, knowing your diagnosis, knowing your attachment style, knowing your love language, knowing your trauma story. That's all information, not awareness. I don't want you to clamor on to that because observation is asking a different question. Can you notice what arises without needing to name it? Can you feel sensation without turning it into narrative? Can you watch the mind without believing every word that it says to us? Most people are not actually knowing themselves. They're identifying with their coping strategy, right? Think about that. A lot of people don't know themselves like they think that they do because they're making all these decisions from a dysregulated state, holding on to whatever beliefs that is, and then reacting from that state. And they're identifying with their coping strategy in that narrow pathway they made probably when they were 4 years old and something happened to them. So observation loosens that grip of us having to stay in those coping strategies we've created in order to survive. Because when we were 4 years old, we didn't have a choice. We had to do whatever it was to help us survive. And when you start to practice observation, you begin to see, oh, this is just a thought, not a truth. This is just an emotion, not an instruction. Oh, this is just a pattern that keeps popping up. It's not my identity. And when you can do that, you will experience freedom, a stable kind of freedom that your body and you have been craving. So, I explained to you a lot of what observation is. So let's talk about a practical teaching. Let's talk about a tool we can use and the questions we can ask to make this happen. So observation is a skill. And like any skill, it strengthens with practice. You're going to have to do this for a while. This should become a practice that you do probably for the rest of your life. And here are some simple entry points to get you there. First thing you're going to do is name without judging. Okay, and this is going to be a total mind shift change. So instead of, I'm anxious all the time, just when something's happening, say, oh, anxiety is present. Okay, we're not going to identify because if you say, I am, I really believe in affirmations. If you've been listening to me, you know that. If you say, I am whatever, that is becoming in your creating field. You are writing that into your code. So if you say, I'm anxious, written into your code, and the world's going to mirror that back to you. Instead, when anxious situations arise or feeling anxiety is present, you're not identifying with it, but you are noticing it. Instead of, I used to do this all the time. I am failing because I'm a failure. Oh, a story of failure is showing up. Like, why? What? And that gets into it further, but first we just want to name it. Oh, I hear a story of failure showing up. And this creates that space without the denial. Okay, second thing we want to do is observe the body before the story. Okay, so when you know, like, oop, anxiety's present. Oh, I hear a story of failure coming through. Where do you feel this in your body? And how do you feel this in your body? Like, is it tight? Is it in your chest? Is it heavy? Is it buzzing? Are you one that I kind of do with like the failure? I start dissociating and disconnecting, like I'm not present anymore. And I go like into la la land, kind of like a numb to just cope and get through. So, where are you feeling this sensation come up in your body? Oh, fear is arising. Oh, anxiety is arising. Depression is arising. Where do I feel it in my body? Stay with that sensation longer than you think that you should. So if you're feeling it in your heart, we're going to reflect into the heart. Okay. And we're going to send some healing energy into the heart because the body and energy can resolve what your mind is escalating. Because our mind is a very powerful tool and it'll begin to escalate. When you have that story of fear arising, that story of failure, that's the one we were doing the example of. When that story of failure becomes present and you feel it building, your mind will run. My mind has run. Oh my gosh, I failed this test. I failed at school. I failed. Like, I will start thinking of all of the times I failed because your neural pathways are building concrete evidence for you to say, yep, I'm always a failure. It's trying to get you back into that neural pathway that you've created. Instead, we're going to say, oh, I have a story of failure coming up. Let's think about all of the ways I have not failed because we don't want to make that narrow pathway. When are times that I am a successful person? And I start thinking of all the things I've done right, even if it's just that day. Like, oh, you know what? This morning I woke up, I brushed my teeth, I made my favorite coffee. I fed my kids and got them out the door with their dad. That's a lot of work. And we did it successfully with no tears. All of the ways that I am successful, that I am not a failure. So you're going to stay with that feeling and let the body resolve it. Because we believe in energy healing here. Okay, energy is so powerful. So third, we're going to delay action. So first, you name it without judging. Okay. Second, you're like, where is this happening in my body? Third, we're delaying action. Not forever, just long enough to observe. You don't need to respond to every thought that you have. You don't need to act on every emotion that you have. Stillness is not avoidance when you're doing it consciously. Like, oh, here's that feeling of failure right here in this moment. I'm being presented this project and the story of failure is coming through. Like, I'm going to fail at this. Why is my boss giving me this project? And instead of reacting right away, like, oh, I don't know, boss, I don't think I can do that. Maybe so and so would be better for this project. We're going to sit. Your boss is looking at you, right? You're like, I'm going to give you this project. And all of this is happening really fast in our head. Like, you're thinking of all the times you failed. No reaction. No, like, word vomit of, oh, I'm not the best candidate for that. So and so is so much better than me. We're not going to do any of that. You're going to consciously not react with your regular neural pathways. Fourth, you're going to get curious instead of certain. So certainty locks us into this reaction. Like, oh, I'm always a failure. Why would my boss give me this project? Curiosity instead opens up awareness. Like this story of failure. What might this be protecting? Why am I protecting this about me? When did this pattern start? What happens if I do nothing just for this moment? Okay. So a lot of times we can go through this fairly quickly. And the more you practice this, the quicker you can get at it. So that if you are in the situation of your boss looking at you like, I'm going to give you this project, fear rushes over you. And you're like, that's interesting. Why do I feel fear over a project my boss wants to give me? Obviously, they think I'm capable, or else they wouldn't be doing that. Obviously, God and universe think I'm capable because nothing comes in my creator field that I cannot handle. That's interesting. What is this protecting? Oh, it's protecting the thought that this is for me. If if I fail, people might perceive me as stupid. And I've always felt stupid my whole life because I wasn't in the GATE program. Because I didn't have a 4 above a 4.0. I didn't have a 4.5. I'm always protecting this need to feel smart and protecting myself from that fear of feeling stupid. Okay. When did that pattern start? When I was a kid. So what happens now if I don't react from that place of trying to protect myself and saying, "Oh, I don't think I'm the best choice for that project. So and so so much smarter than me and I think could handle it more." And say we're not going to react from that. We're going to say to our boss, "Okay, we could just leave it at that. You can go back to your office and think some more there." Okay? So, with all of that, I'm sure you're thinking of your own types of feelings that come up while you can go through that process. Okay? Because I know for me, things happen throughout the day. Just looking at my day ahead, I'm interviewing from somebody for my podcast, and that's a new venture for me. I have some feelings of insecurity that become present. Like, who am I? Who am I to be the one hosting the podcast and asking the questions? So, it's like insecurity, you're a little present. What's going on here? And then I could just give today as an example. Then I'm getting my hair done. Well, I have some insecurities around self-image. So usually like getting my hair done is really a fun thing. Ever since I've had brain surgery, I have not felt that I look like myself that I used to look like. I look very different than I used to. So like getting my hair done does not have the same meaning that it used to have prior to brain surgery. Because I'm thinking, oh, I gotta sit in that chair and look at myself in the mirror. I did my makeup today because it always makes me feel better when my hair's looks like a little mop on my head and my eyebrows look nice. So I have to find that thing that's like, ooh, if I get my eyebrows nice, I could focus on that and be like, oh, girl, your eyebrows look really nice today. Once your hair's done and you don't look like you have a mop on your head, you're gonna look really nice. So these things just happen throughout our day, and we can rewire new neural pathways to change the way that we address them. So we can get out of living in this way we used to live and in this negative cycle and move instead into a world that we want to create. So, observation is very sacred. because it says, I trust myself enough to listen before I move. It says, I trust my body enough to speak first. We let our body tell us what's going on. And I trust that I do not need to rush my healing because we live in the world of convenience. Okay, and it drives me crazy. And it drives my husband crazy too. He's been really down this convenience path. He's been really studying and telling me different little snippets, and he shares them on his Facebook group if you're interested in joining that and learning from him. But he talks so much like when you're in this convenience lane, you're checked out. You are not living. Okay? And same thing, that this rush. When you realize you don't have to rush, like life just opens up. And we can learn so much more and we can become present. So if we think about regulation, regulation creates safety because we're not in survival mode. So once we've created this safety, observation creates that clarity that we're seeking. And that clarity sometimes is not a shout. Remember, because that would be convenience. It'd be convenience if you're like, okay, I'm regulated. Observation, tell me why I'm always anxious. It might not shout at you. It will whisper. It'll show up in small ways. But you need to be present and regulated to even see that come through. So if this landed with you, I'd love to hear from you. Share this podcast with whoever needs to hear it. Tag me on Facebook or Instagram. Tell me how observation has played a role or a lack of a role in your life. I want to hear all of the stories. Okay. In our next episode, we will move into the next stage of rooted. And that will be later on next week. Okay. Because before we get to the next stage of rooted, on Monday, we have part 2 with Octavia. So if you've not listened to part 1 with Octavia, I highly suggest you go back to episode 52 and give that a listen, because on Monday, we're going to learn even more about Octavia, and it is juicy and it is great, and I highly suggest you listen to it. So that'll be on Monday. Next week on Thursday, we'll get into the next part of Rooted, and we'll keep moving through this a little mini series, okay? So for now, your only work is this: notice, pause, and stay, because we are not rushing. You are not behind. You are learning to finally see in general. You are learning to see. So I look forward to hearing about your experience with observation. Share this podcast. If you're listening on Spotify, go ahead and go to my page, click the star ratings. The more ratings we have, the more follows I have on the podcast, the more this podcast gets pushed out to like-minded people who also need to be hearing this message. I'm so grateful that you're here, and I can't wait to chat with you later. I love you. Thank you for listening. Expand the life, healing, and happiness of others in your field by sharing this episode. You can get more of my content and other helpful tips by following Raven Rabbit LLC on TikTok, Instagram, and Facebook. Be sure to comment on Spotify and answer the episode's question so I can keep creating content you love and desire. Thank you so much.